Welcome back to the Top Notch Documentaries YouTube channel. It was Sunday the 30th of September, just after 10 AM in the Rogers Park neighbourhood on Chicago's far north side. It was a warm morning and 73-year-old Douglas Watts was out walking his dogs. It was nice weather and Douglas lived in Rogers Park and had resided there for 5 years. Douglas was described as a loving and gentle man. He regularly walked his dogs in the neighbourhood, and this day was no exception. But as he walked along the 1400 block of West Sherwin, where his home was located, something unexpected happened. Douglas was approached by a masked gunman who didn't hesitate to open fire. One loud gunshot was heard by Douglas's neighbour as he was hit in the head and dropped to the ground close to his home. As Douglas lay face down on the ground, his building manager actually simultaneously pulled up and made eye contact with his killer. The killer stared back, but didn't stick about and took off toward an alleyway. He had an opportunity to kill a witness, but didn't go ahead with it, and this may suggest that he's hoping for unsuspecting victims who don't hear him sneaking up on them. The killer was caught on a home surveillance camera running away from the crime scene minutes later, and at first, the murder was considered a fatal robbery attempt, but Douglas's iPhone was left at the scene, and this robbery attempt theory was quickly ruled out when another murder shook the Rogers Park community just 36 hours later. Douglas's murder was unprovoked, and it wouldn't take long for the same killer carrying the same gun to strike out again. Only 6 blocks away from the first crime scene, 24-year-old Eliyahu Moskowitz was gunned down whilst walking along a bike path at around 10:30 PM. Eliyahu was an Orthodox Jew and spent much of his time playing Pokemon Go, which was very popular back in 2018. He played a big role in the Jewish community, and like Douglas, he was well respected and liked by everyone around him. Both his and Douglas's causes of death were sole gunshot wounds to the head, and the killer had been precise and prepared for the murders, with this intent being seen in his outfit selection and method of murder. A gun is quick and non-personal. It can be loud, but it's extremely efficient, and many other killers use firearms for this reason. The Duck Walk killer executed his victims and then fled the scene on foot, which may indicate that he's a local. The killer had obviously intended on carrying out these murders, unlike the typical gang murders done to acquire a feared street reputation or to impress one's peers. Gun crime is no new phenomenon in Chicago, and all ethnicities have at one time or another been involved in gang-related shootings, from the days of Al Capone to the new generation of clique-based gang members. These 2 murders would inevitably become just 2 other murder statistics in a city that has been plagued by murder for decades. But to the police and community alike, these 2 murders were unique and the killer was different. The savage nature of the murders led to a $150,000 reward being offered for information, and this was the biggest reward ever offered in Chicago history. As a result of the video footage, more law enforcement agencies joined the hunt for the killer, and the media nicknamed him the Duck Walk Killer because of his unusual walking stance. The suspect was almost off balance as he approached and fled from the shooting scene, and this could have been because he was filled with adrenaline, or maybe he was anxious to make his getaway, as both murders occurred near to quiet residential areas in Rogers Park, which is not nearly as active when it comes to shootings as other parts of the city. Both murders happened within a short space of time and then abruptly stopped. The killer was caught on surveillance, but the footage only highlights his strange walking style and not his identity. It would appear like the suspect is black, but even that was brought into question when a Twitter user made the comment that the suspect could be wearing a mask to appear like he has a different skin complexion. This uncertainty isn't helped by the varied backgrounds of the community. Rogers Park is a very diverse neighbourhood on Chicago's far north side. Unlike other parts of Chicago, there is little segregation in Rogers Park. The neighbourhood has many middle-class families of all different ethnicities and backgrounds, and this integration has been a success overall. However, the case of the Duck Walk killer and his motive may have arrived from this integration of cultures. It is a well-known fact that cultures can struggle to mix, and when there is a large population of one culture and less of the others, conflict tends to arise. A theory began to circulate that the Duck Walk killer had a hate crime agenda. This theory stemmed from the backgrounds of the victims. Douglas was a gay man, and Eliyahu was an Orthodox Jew. He was dressed in traditional Jewish clothing when he was murdered, and some say that this was the reason as to why he was killed, although he was the second victim and he was murdered at night time. There is a large Orthodox Jewish population in and around Rogers Park, and it has faced abuse and threats from some. I wouldn't rule out the hate motive theory, but it's a tough theory to verify, as the killer hasn't been caught yet and hasn't reached out to the media or police to voice a hate motive like many extremist types. The killer was clearly ready to commit a murder when he went out dressed in all black clothing and he was masked up. He was armed and it was broad daylight when he murdered Douglas, which may suggest that he'd killed before, as this is ultra brazen behaviour for a first kill, especially given the quiet street where Douglas was killed. As mentioned, Rogers Park isn't as dangerous as other parts of the city. Sure, gangs are active, and there have been cases where innocent people are caught in crossfire, but these murders were premeditated, and the victims were not attempted to have been robbed. Both had their valuables left on their persons. The murders caused much fear to spread within Rogers Park. The mostly peaceful and safe community had now transformed into a terrifying nightmare for many, as police began patrolling the streets and 40 detectives began to investigate public tips to try to bring the masked killer to justice. A community meeting was held so that the residents could ask police questions and feel more secure living in their community. The murders were very unexpected, and many believe that those not involved in the gang lifestyle or criminality were immune from victimisation. That wasn't the case. The most disturbing part about this case is the unknown elements of it. Without knowing a motive, many Rogers Park residents feel like the killer may still exist in their community, flying under the radar, ready to strike out again at any time. The hate motive could explain the killings, but they could also be explained by his weapon of choice, a handgun. The weapon says a lot about the offender. He wanted to headshot his victims and take their lives quickly. He wasn't open to negotiation or any spoken pleas. He didn't drive to a more dangerous area of the city to shoot anyone and went after people who were clearly harmless, walking their dogs or just out at night taking a walk. Like many other killers, he didn't intend for the victims to fight back or even see him coming. There wasn't likely a sexual motivation, and there were probably multiple motivations as to why the Duckwalk killer began his crimes. The fact that financial gain wasn't present from the crimes, and it's very unlikely that these were paid hits, would suggest that the killer, surprise surprise, did this for his own enjoyment, and probably searched for victims of convenience before striking out. He was caught on video camera at 9:10 AM, the same block where he murdered Douglas around an hour later. Was he just walking up and down waiting for a lone victim? The abrupt halt to any more killings by this offender in Rogers Park has confused many people to this day. Had the killer felt the increased heat from law enforcement, or had he moved to a new city to restart his sickening spree? Who knows? But hopefully Douglas and Eliyahu's loved ones can receive the news that this killer is off the streets very soon. Unprovoked murder is despised more than anything, and these killings were senseless and cruel. Rest in peace to both of the victims, and let's hope that justice can one day be served, and Rogers Park can be a better place to live once again. This has been the case of the Duckwalk killer. As always, thank you for watching.